All right. Well, it's 6:30. We're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the Montpelier-Roxbury Board of School Directors, and today is Wednesday, December 17th. And welcome everyone. Also want to say for everybody watching at home, hope everybody has a great and fruitful and productive last few days of school before the break, and then a warm and healthy winter break to everyone. So I know there's great anticipation for that, but we do still have a few days of school left. Just reminding the students out there who are watching,
Especially your son.
who wishes there were more snow days. All right, so we're going to get started with the first order of business, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to members of the public and just hear what folks have to say about any item that is on the agenda. The board, just as a reminder, does not engage in conversation with the public during public comment, but we're very eager to hear what folks have to say. So first, we'll open it up to anybody who's here in the room who would like to make public comment, and then we can take a list of speakers for folks online, if there's anybody online. Anyone in the room here for public comment? Seeing none. Maybe do we have any hands raised?
I'll give him 1 second. I don't see hands raised.
Okay.
And Mia, we're having a second public comment period after the budget
Yes.
discussion?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for the reminder. Yes, on the agenda, after Libby and Mike present the second draft of the budget, we will open it up for public comment and questions from the public on the draft of the budget. Okay, so then let's move into the consent agenda, which is just a moment or a piece of our agenda where the board will move a number of different documents at once. Things like meeting minutes from previous meetings, our payroll, and things like that. And so it's all pretty pro forma things. And so nothing very exciting in here. And
It's not just.
here, you get the seat right here. Welcome. Glad you're here. All right. But of course, any member of the board can pull something off of the consent agenda for discussion if they so choose. So with that, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second, thank you. Any discussion? I was just wondering, Libby, since we have this one item, the Winooski Valley and statewide choice of public high school collaborative agreement, since public choice has been in the state conversation as they've been discussing consolidation, I just wonder if you could remind us what this agreement, what this means for us. And
This agreement has been in place for quite a long time before my time. And what it is just everybody who's in the Winooski Valley. So us, West Central, Twinfield, Northfield, it's basically my superintendent's group, Harwood,
kind of this broader region.
Berry. I may have named everybody, or White River Junction. So our kids can choose to go, there's a lottery system, so there's a certain number of spots in each school that we just kind of swap kids. So it's a 1-for-1 match. Money does not follow the kids at all. So our agreement is there's a certain number in statute that you can allow in and you can allow out. So our number is 10 this year. We typically have a wait list for the lottery. It's different from the U32 exchange, which we also have a 1-to-1 match for the exchange for U32. So it's a different agreement from that. But this one's in statute and regions have it across the state.
Right. So sort of like a limited school, like public school choice
Choice, yeah.
within this region. Okay, thank you. Just helpful to remind ourselves. Anything else from the consent agenda? Okay. With that, is there all those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is to have a presentation from some of our students from Main Street Middle School. Welcome, we're very glad you're here. We would like to invite you up to the speakers table, please. And if you can also just grab chairs. If you all want to sit, you're also welcome to stand and get the chairs out of there.
Stand.
Okay, great.
I am super excited for this crew because I got to be in Chrissy Keegan's classroom. Were some of these students in that room?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we saw.
Yeah, we saw you.
Being in the background.
I know you.
Strangely, and they had one of the best Socratic circles, meaning a circle of kids in the middle, a circle of kids on the outside. Chrissy didn't say one word to them except go. And they were asking each other the most in-depth questions that probably Chrissy couldn't even imagine himself asking the kids, showing true conversational skills and really tough questions. So I was so excited to see that. I had goosebumps. Like didn't I look at you and I was like, this is awesome during it. It was so great. So I'm excited that y'all are here. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. I want to make sure that the microphone can pick up what you're saying. So could you just can we do a sound check from where they are? Why don't one of you say something?
Something.
Perfect. Okay, great. Take it away.
We have been reading The Hate You Give, which is a book by author Angie Thomas about a teenager named Star. Star lives in a neighborhood called Garden Heights where there is a lot of gang action and violence. She goes to school in a town called Williamson where a lot of her friends and her boyfriend live.
Near the beginning of the book, she witnesses her friend Khalil, who is killed by a police officer's death. This leads to a lot of main events in the book, like Star battling racism in her everyday life. One of the main topics in the book is racism, and Star faces a lot of it, including witnessing Khalil's death and going to the mostly white school where some of her friends are racist on a daily basis.
For some of the book, she has a hard time deciding if she wants to reveal that she was the witness to Khalil's death. Originally, she is afraid to speak out for fear of being a target to violence and aggression, but throughout the book, she decides that standing up for her friends and her beliefs is more important to her than staying quiet because of fear. This book talked and taught us a lot about bravery and how to make hard decisions.
Another main topic in this book is family and friends. Star has to make decisions about whether or not to keep people in her life, like her friend Haley, who makes rude, wrong, and racist comments many times. The book discusses what a good friend is and when you should let go of people.
Star gets a lot of support from her friends and also from her family. Her parents, Maverick and Lisa, are very supportive and helpful to her throughout the whole book. So is her half-brother, Seven. The book also addresses how different families work and standing up and being there for your family.
This book has had many deep topics that contributed very well to the book and to discussions we had in class. Overall, it taught a lot of very valuable life lessons on many different things, and it got us to think deeply about many different topics like racial bias and white privilege, and all the other themes and topics it included.
Thank you.
Is this next slide?
Yeah.
I need to be your Vanna. There you go.
Okay. During our time reading The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, we learned a lot through activities. We participated in a Socratic seminar as a class about the themes of the book. We watched a movie adaptation. We completed several vocabulary slideshows. We tracked character development. We completed a digital workbook summarizing each chapter of the book. We had classroom discussions, and we wrote a response to literature for our summative project.
We as 7th and 8th grade students appreciate that we were able to learn about real world themes and ideas from the book The Hate You Give, like authentic language and untrustworthy friendships. These are things that we can experience as middle school students. People may think that using authentic or mature language in this book sets a bad example for students, but we realize that kids are going to hear or even say bad language whether they hear it in this book or not. The best thing to do is to educate them. For example, in one instance, the characters are at a teenage party in which it would be unrealistic for them to be using French language. So every time the author uses it, it had a purpose.
Also, Angie Thomas brought up the important theme of untrustworthy friends. This is difficult to talk about, but many middle schoolers can relate to it, so it is important for them to hear.
One of our favorite things about Thug is that it does not sugarcoat the problems in the story. The book Thug shows ideas like racism, untrustworthy friends, and even authentic language. Being honest with these situations have been a crucial part of learning about Star's struggles. Although some of the ideas in this book might not be easy to talk about, you go to school to learn about this kind of stuff. School prepares you for the world and how to take care of yourself when you are older. But the thing about the world is that there's other things besides learning about linear relationships and the 3 branches of government, which we are currently learning about.
Well said.
Thank you very much.
Very nice job.
Thank you.
Very good job.
Okay, and now on to something a little less exciting, but no less important. The second draft of our budget.
Get it up here.
Yes, Mike, we are gonna ask you to come to the speakers table.
No process. I find it very exciting for the record.
That's right. We were fascinated 2 weeks ago.
Hold on one second. I accidentally closed my tab.
It's all right.
Okay. So we're here to present the second draft of our school presentation. It was a just disclaimer to the board. Mike and I are constantly working on this slideshow with Anna as well, and so it may be slightly different than the one that you had in your packet. I can't remember when the last update actually was, so it may have been at about 3:30 this afternoon. So just know that your packet may be different, and Anna will certainly put the most recent update on the public documents on our website for people to grab. So tonight we're going to talk some of the things you've heard before, the board has heard before, but are important to reiterate. I do want to say that as our practice changed last year, slides that we showed in the first budget presentation, like the enrollment slides and all of that, they're now at the very end of this slideshow. So we're calling that the appendix, but they're still there for reference. So you don't have to search through multiple slideshows if you want to get that information. So we're not going to go into that tonight unless we need those slides for something to show some evidence towards something, but just know that those are there. A reminder of this is where we are right now, our second draft, second meeting in December. We'll get feedback from the board and the community tonight, and we'll continue to work on this as more knowns are coming in for the next board meeting on January 7th. Just a reminder of the glossary of terms, if anybody is interested in those, to have right next to you. But of course, shout out when we use some of these terms to make sure that you know what we're talking about in the moment as well. That's fine. Just to reiterate our recommended priorities, we want to maintain resources for our effective MTSS model and SEL, social emotional learning, and academics. We have policies and educational quality standards, also research-backed guidelines that we want to look at for staffing levels. We want to allow for professional learning and active classroom instruction. We want to make sure we sustain our safe facilities. We want to ensure the continuation of co-curricular activities, as that's a huge value of our community and our school. We're going to develop a budget that's fiscally responsible for taxpayers by exploring all our systems for efficiencies and ensure financial coherence across our buildings. And we want to protect services dedicated to our most vulnerable children and families. Those are the administration's goals and priorities as we're working through budget. Look at those beautiful children. That's who we're doing this for. Just absolutely gorgeous kids we got here. Some unknowns that we still have. So the long-term weighted ADM, which is our weighted pupils, essentially, are getting closer and closer by day. Nick and Measure Ed, the company that we work with, are literally going student by student at the moment. And I think Mike is bribing him with some sort of coffee treat. I'm not sure, because he does like cartwheels whenever Nick comes. The number we're going to show you today is probably pretty close to accurate, and it will only go up by a couple students at this point. We would be very surprised if it went down. And when it goes up, that's a very good thing for us. The common level of appraisal is a prediction, correct? It's a prediction. We haven't gotten the actual numbers just yet. And Mike is pulling those from the December 1, an appendix to the December 1 letter, well, link from the December 1 letter. So those may change when we get the actual letter from the state, which has not come yet. Our revenues, we did receive the revenues on the 15th in the evening, and you didn't adjust the slides for that, did you?
The ones that we're gonna potentially present,
Yeah.
yes, but not the ones you may have gotten earlier. It just ran out of time. Came like at 5 o'clock on Monday.
Okay, so the slides we have today have those revenue,
No, sorry, not
I
the
didn't
one
think
who
you
did,
did.
sorry, you're right. My offline version has it.
Okay.
Sorry.
I didn't think you did, I was
Because
like,
it
that's a
can't,
surprise,
you know,
okay,
it got late, it got there late.
yeah.
Just a quick note, so the link in the agenda is the updated version.
Okay.
Whereas the one that was sent to us
Right.
as a file is not, so we can
No,
look
you
at this
can't
one.
access
Oh,
it.
great, perfect.
That is with a fine tooth comb. Scott Williams is looking at those documents right now. The expenses, we are negotiating with our teachers and our instructional assistants. That will probably remain an unknown through budget season. The Career Center also came in at that same time, so that's not represented in this budget. Those two things won't influence the numbers all that much, though.
Not dramatically.
Yeah. So here we go. Here's our budget at a glance right now, and wow, I'm looking at that, and then the people in the crowd, I'm sorry, we don't have that on a piece of paper for you because that's really hard to read. So I apologize for that. So the general budget right now is coming in at 34,500,000 or so dollars, 500,000. The operations committee is going to recommend to the board, and it's still up for board discussion, to add 285,000 to the capital plan, which makes our total budget 34,786,203. Our non-tax revenues are 5,904,745, which we're going to go into in more detail in a bit. Mike's going to go into more detail based on board's recommendations and feedback from last time around the non-tax revenues, which makes our education spending $28,881,458. Our long-term weighted ADM is up from last year. So if you think the first LDW ADM number we got for this school year was down by 50 students. We are now up by several students, by 14 students, and we anticipate this to go just over 1,900. That's where our calculator is pointing us right now, but we haven't gotten that official word from the state. So we think it's going to be 1901, but we're not positive yet. I'm still waiting on that.
Another 13 kids?
Yes.
What explains it going up so much from last year?
There were, so I know enough about this whole process to be dangerous. So there were some errors in how we were accounting for, that's not true. Our direct certification was not reporting the correct number for free and reduced. And that got fixed at the agency of education level. Then we learned that so a direct certification picks up students that access certain services, community services like Medicaid and that kind of thing. But some kids still qualify for free and reduced, but don't get those services, so they wouldn't be counted. So when that happens, our school district can go to the forms that families fill out and get identify them that way. And so Nick hadn't done that yet. And so that was another increase in LTW ADM by going to the forms. And then there was some significant pieces with English language and pre-K. So our pre-K students who qualify for English language services were not being counted by the Agency of Education because they don't take the WIDA test. And the agency only qualifies students for English language if they take the WIDA test, which is not written in law anywhere. So we petitioned to have that changed and we won that. So that increased our LTW ADM. And then about 20 or so pre-K students were not identified correctly in our system. It was our mistake when they were registered because they go to a private pre-K provider. And so they weren't registered as UES students when they should be. So all of that work, gets an increase there.
Yeah.
So Nick is literally, did I miss any of those categories? Those are the ones I've talked to with Nick.
You nailed it.
Yeah. So all of those things have increased our LTW ADM significantly.
And then actual like students in enrollment, regular unweighted enrollment were down by like 11 versus last year.
I'd have to look. I'm sorry, I'm not sure exactly what the number is.
I might be misremembering.
That might be in one of those slides. It's at the end. of
Yeah,
this
it could be in the
presentation.
enrollment. It will be in the enrollment slides if you want to go ahead and check that out.
At the bottom of the
Yeah.
presentation.
Sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head.
I'm sorry, I don't want to go too far off, but
No, you're
if
fine.
there's pre-K in private that somehow we help. Somehow we're
Yep.
sort of utilizing our funds to help.
Yes.
that. Okay,
Yeah, because we pay for 10 hours of that.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so that makes our education spending per long-term weighted ADM 15,305. That's up 3.44% from last year, which is essentially the cost of inflation. Right now, the dollar yield hasn't changed since the last time we presented, so that's $8,849. So that makes our equalized residential tax rate $1.96, $1.73 essentially, which is a decrease of 2 cents from last year. We get a cent reduction from Act 127. Just a reminder of that because Act 127's new weights hit our district pretty hard, and so we continue to get that cent reduction. And so when you put all that together, our adjusted equalized residential tax rate is $1.64, which is a 2 cent increase from last year, or 1.48% increase from last year. So when you're looking at these pieces, this is level programmed. So we haven't touched our programming in any way, shape, or form. The operations committee is offering to add $285,000 to the capital plan. And these are the things that are in the school district's control, with the exception of the dollar yield. So I just wanted to show this to you all because a 1.48% increase or 2 cents is a pretty reasonable budget for coming in at. We're gonna go into the CLA just a little bit here, because this slide right here is not the end of the story for how property taxes are calculated. The CLA, just a reminder that the goal of the CLA is that every property owner in Vermont pays education taxes based on what their home would sell for today. The problem is that our town says our houses are worth one amount of money based on the appraisal that they do once approximately every 7 years, 5 to 7 years. And it would actually sell for more than that in today's figures. So if you're taxed only at 200K, for instance, for what your house is appraised for, you're paying less than your fair share compared to a neighbor in a town that just got reappraised or updated its values. The fix for that is what's called the CLA, the common level appraisal. And so the state looks at recent home sales in the town to see how far off the town's assessments are, and they give your town a score, which is the CLA percentage. The last reappraisals that happened for our two towns, in Roxbury, the last reappraisal was 2022, and in Montpelier, the last reappraisal was in 2023. In general, the year that you're reappraised, that's a good thing for your tax bill. However, your house is also worth more, so it generally works out. Jake will tell us it works out in the end. However, it is hard. It's a hard concept to understand. I think it's a little bit of a nebulous concept. So just as a visual, the state raises the tax rate to make sure homeowners are paying their fair share when homes are selling for more than their assessed value. And the state lowers the tax rate to make sure homeowners are paying their fair share when homes are selling for less than their assessed value. Just as a little visual reminder here of how the CLA works. So when we're thinking about our school budget, the last step is to figure in the CLA. The CLA is affecting our tax rates significantly. And so the CLA is down in yellow there. So what went from a 1.48% tax increase in Montpelier because of the CLA becomes a 9.3% tax increase. And in Roxbury with this budget, it becomes a 44.81% increase because of the CLAs, which is very hard to stomach. Any questions about how that CLA affects the tax rate?
What are the numbers on the CLA row?
So can you say that a little louder, Jake? I'm sorry.
Yeah, but on the CLA row, what's the 118.6 and 87.1?
Well,
Montpelier and Roxbury respectively.
those are the new,
The new CLAs for the year we're in. We're budgeting.
So the 118.6 is Montpelier CLA and the 87.1% is the Roxbury CLA. And then you can see what they were last year too, Jake, in the FY 26 line.
Okay. So one question is, there's a quotient or there's a factor that the state determines that sort of is meant to sort of provide a buffer. And I kind of want to, if anyone has an understanding of how that is set.
It's the state adjustment.
Yes, the state adjustment, because when I shared this with our clerk, he was like, that's not our CLA. That would trigger an immediate reappraisal. And she shared the form that signed by our own Joe Runner. And I pointed out that all of the information on that form doesn't come into here because it would add a lot of extra complication. And it's complicated enough as it is. But I'm just curious how the state sort of figures out that number that is meant to sort of shield huge jumps, which it seems that it's not in our case in this situation, but.
right, so each town gets their CLA calculated by municipality, and then I think this is the second year in which the legislature sort of moved a factor from the yield calculations and moved it into this sort of more transparent, basically a statewide average of the CLAs. So it's sort of meant, and so then your new statewide adjusted CLA is one of those divided by the other. So the idea being that, so for example, Roxbury CLA might have dropped pretty precipitously, and so this statewide adjustment is meant to sort of even that out statewide. And Jake can probably explain better than I, but the statewide adjustment factor is basically like the average CLA statewide, and it's about 71-72%.
That's
Meaning that as a state, our overall statewide grand list is about 71%, 72% of what the fair market value of all of that would be. Cause yeah, there are definitely towns last year, this year, years in past that have really big swings in their CLA. And we continue to see that because basically the CLA is adjusting for the fact that properties continue to sell for a lot more than they're listed at on their grand list. That might eventually sort of slow down, and the numbers come from a 3-year evaluation of the real estate market. So theoretically it could like start to slow down and sort of balance out. And then you also combine that with the legislature did put in place a requirement that towns reappraise every 6 years, meaning that ideally our grand list values will stay more up to date and the CLAs won't be quite so volatile, and the grand list won't be quite so stale. So that doesn't necessarily apply to Montpelier and Roxbury because we have actually reappraised within the last 5 years, but even so, our numbers continue to change.
still seem to be in a real estate bubble. I mean,
Yeah.
and if there's 3-year average, it's almost like this number sort of hits 2 to 3 years after the peak of the bubble, in a sense.
It'll still be baked into that for
Yeah.
3 years, yeah.
The other thing
And
that
I just want to be clear on one
Sorry.
thing too, right? No, I'm looking at you.
Oh.
The number we're showing here, 87.1, that's the predicted statewide adjusted number. That's not Roxbury's actual CLA, it's the statewide adjusted number.
Correct. The numbers that came with the letter, they were a little bit less solid this year. Compared to prior years, because the grand list software company that is doing the equalization study kind of didn't have their act together with providing like the report that's really needed. So Roxbury in that attachment to the December 1st letter had like a 61% CLA, but it's gonna be higher than that. You know, I don't really know for sure, but it's gonna be several percentage points higher. So I think that 87.1 is not gonna be that bad. It's gonna be something a little bit
higher.
It's still gonna be terrible, but not as terrible as that
it's gonna help, but it's not gonna help significantly.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was asking Gemini, our friend, about. Other towns with big swings, and apparently like Orange had a 19% decrease last year. And Killington last year had a huge increase because they reevaluated the value of all of their properties, and that things were selling like hotcakes in that area, and so that reevaluation corrected their situation. The other thing I just want to say before we go on about Roxbury is there are very few homes in sales. And so.
Yeah.
If you have, you know, you kind of drive through Roxbury and you kind of can get a certain perspective. But there are some really incredible properties up in the mountains, and it's just over the way from Warren. And so I'm guessing that you could have one sale at a $2.5 million property.
Whoa.
That could really, really change how things look in Roxbury.
There's not a lot of people moving in.
I was connecting with our former select board chair, and they were saying, now that you're pointing out that it's about the CLA, there have been some really dramatic sales that really surprised me. And it makes sense that there's such a big gap.
the equalization study does have a mathematical process for identifying outliers. And weeding them out. That being said, you can, with a small town, you can still get a one particular sale that can really move the needle quite a bit. Even if it's not a $2.5 million top of the mountain place. So yeah, that's part of it.
And so my hope is that, as I understand it, the select board can contact the company that did their reappraisal in 2022 and ask them to take a look at some of the data.
They could, I misunderstood that, because so in the year of a reappraisal, that is definitely part of the reappraisal firm's responsibility. So this year, when we send out the equalization study results, which is hopefully next week. The municipality has a chance to appeal, and they can go sale by sale, they can talk to the district advisor and ask questions about it, and they may get a recalculated.
And they
CLA
can
and
get
stuff.
help from the organization that helped with the original reappraisal with that?
If their contract said that they
If
would,
may
which they
say- it may or
should,
may
but
not.
they may not.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to make that as public as I can, because this is really devastating.
Yeah.
For Roxbury,
Yeah.
and, it's really not about. You know, it's about the way that we calculate our education spending in this state, and there's a, you know. It's a system with a lot of flaws, and if there's any kind of recourse or action that Roxbury can take to sort of. At least try to see what can be done, I hope that we can encourage our select board members to take those steps.
I second that.
Mhm,
I'll say.
Okay, so here's our residential tax rate history. You can see that is quite a swing. So that green line with the ginormous incline at the end. That is Roxbury's tax rate with the CLA. The dotted green line, which is the bottom, sorry, it's so small. Where it kind of plateaus at the bottom there, that bottom dotted line, that's Roxbury's tax rate without the CLA. Montpelier with the CLA is the solid red line, and Montpelier without the CLA is the dotted red line.
Why would they be different without the CLA?
Can you say that again?
What shouldn't the
Oh, wait, I understand what you're saying.
yeah, school district tax rate?
The pre-CLA rate should be the same for both.
It is, they combine in FY 25. Oh, no, in FY 24, they, they come together and they stay together.
Yeah, but we've been in a district with them.
Is it because of the merger?
No, that was FY, that would have been FY19. That's an excellent question, Jake.
As I recall, there were different tax incentives for towns. I think.
That could be it.
That got factored in before the CLA.
That got, yes, I believe
And then
that,
those expired probably. in
Wasn't it 5
FY24.
years
yes.
after the merger?
Yeah,
that
there
faded
were,
out?
That would
there
make
were sort of incentives of some,
Good memory, Rick.
I been doing this for a while.
Yeah, me too. I didn't remember that.
What year did we bridge?
2018.
So FY19 or FY19.
Yes, yes. And it lasted for
Just
5 years.
5 year.
And it was a
Sometimes
5 year set.
5 year,
It was a
10,
set,
10.642,
yeah,
but,
I don't know why it didn't apply equally.
just not really.
yeah, I feel like that should also be on the school district tax rate, but I might be, I don't know.
I have.
All of it.
I'll look into it, I'll just double check everything.
Yeah, Mike can look into that for us.
Yep.
That's an excellent question, Jake.
Guys, probably a less good question.
I can say it's excellent, Tim, to make you feel better.
Thanks. If one is above 100%, Montpelier's is 118, Roxbury's is 87. I would have thought that that would have meant that the adjusted equalized tax rate would go up for one and down for the other. Because one is sort of greater than 100% and one's less than 100%, but I think I'm just not understanding what the common level of appraisal is telling us. Because they both go up, right? Like both of ours goes from a 1.48% adjusted equalized residential tax rate, and Montpelier's goes up to 9, Roxbury's goes up to 37. Like what would a common level of appraisal be such that it would go in the other direction? Do you mind asking that
You
question?
mean our property tax rate, our overall property tax rate would decrease?
Yes, like I would have thought that if one was over 100, one was less than 100, that would mean one's
Oh,
going up,
it-
one's going down.
It's because both go down relative to last year.
Last
Yeah.
year,
It's the difference from last year that causes the taxes to go
Correct.
up.
Okay. I got you,
Good question, Jake. Sorry.
thanks. And since they both went down from last year.
Right,
Right,
That causes it to go up. Okay.
that's right.
right. And unless a reappraisal happens, we can anticipate them to continue to decrease.
Okay, and that's because our houses are becoming less valuable
More valuable in the market,
in the market.
while the appraised value has stayed the same.
the grand list.
The grand list value,
Okay,
when the town, because the town only does an appraisal every 6 years.
all right,
For those 6 years that it hasn't appraised, a home just stays valued at $250,000. But the market over those 6 years, it's probably going up, which is why
Right.
the CLA decreases.
On the CLA, one. I worry about, reporting, if somebody was reporting on this, like the equalization study is not about people's homes. And it's not like the state is saying some individual's home is actually worth whatever. So the previous slide on CLAs, really what the point of the CLA is to make sure each town in aggregate is sending its fair share to the education
Okay.
fund, and it's not about homes, it's about all property. And it's saying, like, the tax department thinks that your total grand list value for your town is this much different from total fair market value.
Right.
So it doesn't say that Mia's home is actually worth whatever.
Yeah.
It's not overriding a town value or telling you that your house, is worth whatever if you try to sell it. It's like an adjustment factor for the town.
That's helpful
you.
clarification. Thank you, Jake. We'll clarify that on the slides too.
I would also, for folks that sort of are having a hard time conceptualizing it. I've looked at the tax form that I get from my clerk's office, and I looked at the value of my home. And compared to what I see on Zillow, which isn't a science, it's just, it's just sort of estimates values, there's a pretty big gap. So if you're watching at home and you're living in Roxbury and you're pulling your hair out. And you have your house registered on Zillow, it wouldn't be the worst thing if you took a look at comparing what Zillow's estimate cost of your home is and what the taxable value of your home is. Because there's likely a pretty significant gap there, and that is another sort of example of why this is so challenging for us.
So in some ways, it seems like it's a wealth tax, right? Like, cause it's saying you have this, generally this
Unrealized gain,
amount
exactly
of
right.
unrealized gain, and amount of wealth that. So that. Okay,
That's exactly
It
right.
is,
Yeah.
however, I think in a, like going back to.
At a town aggregate.
Yeah,
yeah.
a small town.
right,
It might not mean the same thing as a town who sells lots of houses.
theoretical wealth.
Yeah. Okay.
And for people who have, an income adjustment, it would still be the, what, 44%? But.
Nice tee up, Jim. Hold on,
Adjustment?
hold on.
We'll get there.
Hold on. So,
That's next.
just to remind, the board saw this slide last time from the 2024 tax year, which we can extrapolate to about the same numbers-ish for this tax year. And so we saw these slides. Mike, I'll let you talk to these slides here.
Yeah, so the last presentation, the only things that have really changed here are two factors for both Montpelier and Roxbury. You'll see that in the center at the top, under fiscal 27, that 2.52, that's the actual current income sensitive rate that's been calculated using the per pupil spend divided by the income yield, not the home yield, okay? Property yield. So it was reduced slightly from the last presentation. I think it was 2.55%. So slight reduction there. And that could get better if our friend Nick continues to add to the LTW ADM. Because if it goes up 13, that has the equivalency of like a $200,000 revenue find, right? 13 times 15,300 per child. So that would be excellent, and that would help drop the income sensitive rate further. And then the rate in the upper right does 1.386. That is the current homestead yield rate as it sits today. And so that model just calculates everything off of those two rates, income sensitive rate, obviously, and then the homestead rate. So these numbers are just tweaked a little bit from the last time I presented.
So there's Montpelier's and Roxbury's this year.
Right, you can see the dramatic jump of it's all at 886, unfortunately for the Roxbury residents. Yeah, look, I think the next, well, if two slides above that break out the demographics, it was just a reminder to say, you know, that large increase on the homestead tax rate, in theory, assuming there haven't been any new homes being built, it's only going to affect 31% of the residents in Roxbury that actually pay that full homestead tax rate. 53% are either paying a flat rate or the income sensitive rate. And then 16% of the residents are paying kind of a combo based on where they are on that chart that we just showed. It's a combination of income sensitive and the homestead tax rate. But I'm not downplaying it. I'm just trying to explain the demographics of the people being impacted.
Yep.
Yeah.
So folks who are watching could go to either slide 15 or 16, depending on what town you live in, and you could say, okay, this is my homestead value as it's appraised, not market.
Not the market. It's
Right.
It's with
Like you can go to your tax bill, like Red
Yes.
did.
yes.
Okay. And then you can say, oh, and here's what my income is roughly. And then you can find yourself on this chart and say, okay, I'm gonna fall into this dark gray or this light gray or this white area.
Right.
To know whether or not what my taxes are gonna go up.
It's directionally correct. It's not 100% accurate because of all the caveats that Jake helped me spell
Right.
out there at the bottom of the slide, but it's just to help people digest what the budget in front of them is going to impact.
Exactly. And whether or not. Right now, from Montpelier, we're projecting a 9% tax increase once the CLA is factored in, but that's not necessarily the case for every That's not the case for every resident in Montpelier. They
No.
could go to this slide 15 and say,
Correct.
oh, it's not actually gonna be a 9% tax increase for me because I'm in one of these other columns.
Correct. That the percentage that we're talking about on the previous slide, make no mistake about it, impact the homestead residents that are not in the gray,
Yeah,
dark or light. They're paying the full homestead value.
I have to continue to be a jerk, but only because I'm a jerk at work.
Jake, we very much appreciate you on this board. So
Transparency.
don't- Yeah, so don't.
hashtag transparency.
Yeah,
Appreciate
not like this, but the income sensitivity is lag leader.
Yeah. That's right.
When taxes go up a lot, everyone feels it. And Mike's chart is very good, but the credit that you would get in FY 27 that's based on this big spike wouldn't appear on the bill until FY 28.
Right, that's right.
So even like the crew, the population who is under 47,000 and pays, some 2% of their income, even they would experience a big spike in that first year of the spike.
That would be good.
And then they get a bigger credit the following year.
Yeah.
And then there's all kinds of limit.
with tight budgets.
But it's hard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean. A lot of people are surprised, like they think, they were told by whoever that they could only pay a certain percentage of their income, and then their bill comes and they're like, how is this correct? And it's not. And the lag is, and the credit system is one of the possible explanations.
Mike or Libby, on slide 12, budget at a glance. What line, so I only heard briefly yesterday on the ride home, the governor is proposing some sort of buy down again. What line would that impact in this chart? Is that the dollar yield
The
or?
property dollar yield, correct. And so,
We can play with it, Scott, when we get to the.
Yes.
We have a calculator we can play with, so if you wanna see difference, like
Yeah.
what things in how these pieces influence each other, we can play with
okay,
it.
yeah, cool. Including LTW ADM.
Yeah.
Playing with the capital plan, contribute all of it to show.
Okay. So I'm gonna send this over to Michael. The board really wanted some more detail on the expenditures and the revenues from last time, so he did that for us. Go for it, Mike.
Great. So I always like to show, what are the drivers? When we talk about why, our expenditures are up by almost 2 million, 2.165. I just thought I would give you guys, the major buckets. Wages and salaries clearly is well, more than 50%. And that's all from the collective bargaining agreements and some assumptions that we had to make with the unknowns that we face. And so between the teachers, the support staff, and AFSCME, that was the lion's share of the wages and salary increase from the prior year, more than 80. The benefits are up 409, driven by healthcare, which is more than 50% of that increase. FICA, which is about 25%, and then retirements, and then all other, which is like your unemployment,
Vision.
et cetera. Yeah,
Vision,
dental, vision, exactly. Yep. And then obviously services is another big chunk here, and that's primarily related to special education services, third-party support services. And then we had to make a correction to food service. It's been level funded, and the actuals reflect that it's not really 100,000 every year. And I thought it would behoove us and for the board to see what the actual cost of the terrific food service program that Birmingham runs. And if you look at participation, that is clearly an indicator of how good your food service program is, and it's been going up steadily for at least 4 years. So this year I took the time to spend time with Jim and helped him build a real budget, understand here's all your expenses, here's all your revenue, let's put something accurate in front of the board. And that's what we're doing. And that's what you see. So those are the drivers for your fiscal 27 expenditures.
Sorry, for the wages and salaries, there are some, I don't think very many, but there are some positions that are not under CBAs, are they baked into this?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm only reflecting what the union portion of the overall wage increase is.
Okay.
But non-union wages are in that 1194.
Yeah.
Good question.
And just to be clear, this table is the changes in each of those.
The increase from the prior year.
Yes.
Good question. Yep. It's just to understand, when, in the very first slide, we showed, hey, we're up 2.165 million. What's driving it? These are your top
Yes.
4 drivers. That's it. It's that simple. And I believe, what?
I think it was Casey.
Casey was the one that asked me, Mike, I'm a trust but verify type of guy. And I said, sure, let's do it. Let's talk about what the revenue drivers are and what caused them and what had me say we need to revisit. So the revenue drivers are extraordinary reimbursement for special education students. The census block grant went up, which is fantastic. I came from a district that the CBG was going down steadily over time. Your house has been increasing. Transportation aid went up, and then all other actually reduced to get to that 996, because there were some tuition revenues I wanted to be conservative on for students that will not be returning because they've moved into your district, so they don't need to pay tuition anymore. So just things like that I wanted to adjust. So that's the breakdown of the drivers. And then I know it's really small. I apologize for those at home. But I tried to prove to Casey and the operations committee that these are the actions from the last prior years that prove or support my recommendation to raise revenues in 27, because you see this kind of level loaded, if you will, just being, I guess, conservative. And I think looking at it as a whole, my job is to give you guys an accurate reflection of what's actually going on so that we don't need to ask for more ed spending money than we need. And so that's what the revenue reflects today.
So actual special ed extraordinary last year, we got 550.
No, your budget is 550. What you actually received in 2025 was almost $1 million. So the green
Oh,
reflects
okay.
actuals.
Okay, yeah. got
Yep,
it.
and the black is just reflecting budget. And I'll be honest, I mean, the comment I put there is real. I know it's a big increase, so I didn't want to go for the full 100% of what I think we could potentially collect. But so I put 90% to be conservative, but if we get pressure collectively to make some changes, if that's what the board wants to recommend as far as taking cost out, finding additional revenue, this is something it's open for discussion, clearly. And I don't know if I mentioned this last time, but when I left the last meeting, Peggy Sue was very concerned, at least she brought to me that, you know, Mike, by doing this, does this mean I have more risk or could this leave us shortchanged, right? And I said, the beauty of the way special education works in this state is that the expenses and the revenues are tied together. That's the beauty of this, right? So like if students move in that are extraordinarily high for services needed, we'll get more revenue. Or conversely, if those similar students were to leave or services were changed and the reduction in the expenses would drop, and the revenue would drop with it. So they're tied together. So I feel really good that as long as, and I feel good that the budget that Peggy Sue and Pam Foster helped me build on that worksheet B about the students and what their services are, or needs are, I feel good that the revenue will follow. So I don't think there's any risk in this. It's just a better way of predicting your revenue streams. I use the model the AUE gives me. It's not like I'm making up my own stuff here. It's just,
Well, I just want to say I really appreciate this level of detail, and also Casey, thanks for asking so we got it. Because as I was thinking since the last meeting, I feel like we have in some ways benefited a bit from the more of the sort of like just rollover what had been happening in terms of budgeting for revenue, because then we find ourselves with a surplus at the, and so I was starting to get a little nervous, sort of along the lines of Peggy Sue, was saying is, but a little bit more district-wide, you know, if we're being super accurate here, are we overcorrecting in any way? It was just a question I had, and I would just wanted to say that looking at this level of detail, I don't believe we are overcorrecting such that we would then find ourselves with needing to spend more money than we actually budgeted for. I don't believe that's the case, given.
I
what
agree
we
with you,
see
Mia.
here.
I agree with you 100%. In fact, there was a question from the community that kind of was
Yes.
asking that. And so if I may answer this question even deeper, I don't think there's no consequence. I think the word the resident asked was, are there going to be any consequences from doing something right or more accurately? My response is it's never a consequence to do something better or more accurately. The only consequence that could happen by doing what we're doing now is that you may not be able to pad to the unrestricted surplus anymore.
Right.
Okay, so if that's a negative consequence, then so be it. I think the object of any budget building at any school district level that I've been at is that your revenues need to be as accurate as possible, and what you need to spend to educate the children need to be as accurate as possible. It's a net sum game of zero. In a perfect world, you'll spend every dollar you bring in exactly the way you outlined it for all your programming, and you'd end up with zero. No deficit and no surplus.
Right.
And I've been doing this long enough that I've seen them both. And let me tell you, the deficits are no fun. So, right. So all I'm saying is I don't feel there's any negative approach, because at the end of the day, our goal is to get a pretty accurate ed spending number need, because that is the number that everything else is derived from, right? The per pupil spending, which divided by the homestead rate gives you your pre-CLA rate, or conversely, if income sensitive yield rate is also off of that per pupil spending number, which is begging for an accurate ed spending total number. So I think it behooves us to get that as accurate as possible to give your residents in both towns as best accurate tax rate you can. So that's my response.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you on the spot. Any questions on that?
No.
Because you asked the original.
Hearing it the second time after the committee, pretty good at that.
Okay.
Thank you for the time.
Making sure.
I have a question. Are the tools that the AOE is providing different, new, or otherwise improved? Is that what you're sort of saying, or?
I think some people use the tools and some people don't, and I like to use the tools. I think I don't like working harder. I like working smarter, I guess is the best way to say it. Time is valuable, and I like to, if there are tools that exist, I'm gonna use them even if I didn't create them.
Hey, here's the capital plan slide, and we did not update this to 285 contribution. It still says 270 from the original board presentation. So you've seen this exact slide before.
Can you say that again in English?
Was I jargony there?
No, but what we're looking at does not reflect the updated ask that the.
Yeah, so if you look at the green column there.
Yeah.
The operations committee is recommending to the board to be at 285 instead of 270, and this is still reflecting 270.
So just,
The green is,
so just spend 15,000 over?
Yeah, you're right.
the green is the year we're in.
Yeah, we're in.
At 27, I think I did update it to
Oh,
280.
you did update it. I apologize to you.
Well, I've made mistakes, but
I've
not on
looked
that
at
one.
that green column for like weeks now, that's why. It's highlighted green, we gotta highlight the other one in like yellow or something.
You're right. I should put it.
Yeah, I missed that. I missed that as well. Okay, that's
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
So.
So
sorry,
scratch what I said.
So the committee is suggesting, is recommending that the board increase that a little bit from last year by 15,000. I'm assuming there must be something particular in here that.
Yeah, can I-
Yeah, please.
So we talked about, we've been adding 270 for a year, and I'm not sure where that number came from, but it was being held flat, and so we talked about whether or not it should generally increase with some metric. And we tossed around a few ideas. I suggested 1% of the budget, which would have been a little bit more something like 3 or something, I think it would have been 2. Casey had a really good suggestion that, if our general budget is going up by about 6%, then let's just increase the capital. Use that number to increase the capital spend each year, so just start with whatever our otherwise operating budget is, and see that just utilize that same thing, so. It sounded like a reasonable plan, I think maybe a buy into it, and so we recommend, I think we'd all recommend it to the full board.
Thank you.
Just
And does that change answer what you were referring to when we're more accurate and we have less sort of surplus that ends up in our general fund? Because we had more accurate numbers to begin with, by adding here, we're sort of covering what was a sort of unknown surplus.
I think
It's something that's known.
different concept. I think, because this is something that Mike was emphasizing, I think is really important, is maintaining a discipline of, so put the surplus conversation aside, I think we're making a big one-time infusion into the capital fund this year because of the surplus we have. But ongoing budgeting practice, keeping in the habit of dedicating funds to upkeep of our facilities, so we don't dig ourselves into a hole by sort of years of neglect. So, you stop contributing 1 year, and then the next year to get back up to that level is a lift, especially if you're in an otherwise challenging environment. So, we were asking Mike, what's best practice doing this? Is just contribute. So
Be consistent and contribute.
And be consistent. And so we were taking that and adding the level of, okay, let's instead of having a consistent level number, let's have a consistent number that matches the increase of our operating.
But Red, to your point, what would go away by more accurate revenue modeling? We wouldn't have this, it wouldn't be a normal occurrence to be transferring $1.5 million.
Yeah.
That was done, I think you guys voted for that in June.
In June.
Okay, so that would go away. In the future, I mean, that would probably never happen. Actually, most definitely never happen. Unless you went back to the old way of level funding revenue. I don't recommend that.
But having a consistent approach to figuring out how much we want is a more intentional strategy.
How much we want to add to the capital
Yeah,
fund every year, is that what you're saying?
yeah, more intentional strategy than sort of the way we're approaching it in the past.
Mhm.
That is what the operations committee is recommending too.
And there are different ways to do it. He's made a persuasive point, as I think we could probably find other ways to have a theoretical and intentional approach to capital funding. But right now in this place where this sounded very reasonable and appropriate. And I think Tom supported as well, which is important because he's the one that's overseeing the plan to make all these improvements to keep our facilities operating shape.
Okay.
Okay, some more beautiful children. That's smile. Okay, so again, we asked what's the board's goal regarding these tax implications, because we are still in draft form. What more information do you need as we move forward? And then if you'd like to have this conversation, we do have that plug and play calculator. If you want to see like what happens if this happens, if you increase LTW ADM, what happens? If you decrease the dollar yield, what happens? So we do have the budget at a glance calculator available if the board would like to plug and play a little bit to help their discussion.
It's fun.
It's fun for you and
Fascinating.
I.
What I do, I plug in numbers. Fun kicks up.
The amount of time I spend on this plug and play calculator is a little unfair.
Can I ask you to go back to the work that you were describing that Nick's been doing, which is awesome? Does that, like, at what point do those changes impact the budget? Is it only in FY 27? Or like if we're identifying kids that are higher weighted, I don't know if that's the right terminology, does that impact this current fiscal year?
Not the
No.
year we're in, it will impact the 27 budget. At some point, the AOE is gonna have to freeze LTW ADO, right? Get it accurate, freeze it, and that becomes the number.
Mhm.
What we loaded for this budget presentation was something we believe it's not gonna fall any lower than that. If anything, it's gonna go higher.
Mhm.
But we try to be conservative. So we loaded 1887. If it gets close to 1900, if it does.
Yeah.
That's gonna, it's like finding another 200,000 in revenue, which will reduce the ed spend number you need.
But does that, I guess the question I'm asking is, does that mean that we're paying more in this current fiscal year? For that weighted pupil? If we
No,
didn't.
They don't influence each other. If we didn't calculate it right last year.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying, I think.
I mean, I guess the
If our
prepay
numbers- I
wouldn't
mean,
factor
It's,
because,
I think because it's a 2-year average,
Yeah.
whatever happened last year is done. It's frozen, right or wrong. Nick's doing a great job with Measure Ed to
Mhm.
figure out the year we're in, let's get those students weighted correctly.
Yeah.
And that will help us for next year,
Yeah,
because it's a 2-year average, right?
I had the same question. I thought maybe it would impact this year's revenues. If we're seeing what it is this year, but.
Yeah.
No.
I shouldn't say it reduces your ed spend is your ed spend. But more
Your
students
per
will
pupil
lower
spending.
the per pupil spending.
Exactly.
Which helps us in the homestead rate and the income sensitive rate, both.
I would like to see on the budget calculator. I'm, I believe supportive of the move to put $285,000 into the capital fund. I'm just curious to see what it looks like to do half of that and none of that. How does that adjust the,
So if I
tax rate.
make that 0, it's gonna be hard for y'all to see, I'm sorry.
yeah,
So if I make that 0. Then it decreases, so the percent difference for Montpelier is 8.17. And for Roxbury, it's 43.32.
It's about a penny and a half on the Montpelier side. If you redo it, I can tell you exactly what it's gonna be on the Roxbury side. So 1887 versus 0, 18867. So it's about 2 cents.
yeah. So it's not
Dramatic.
a huge,
No, it's
It's not dramatic, and if the board said to us, say. Could you try to reduce your expenditures or reduce this number by 500,000? Let's say by $500,000, that would be something that we would consider. That would be part of that calculation. If we wanted to maintain the level programming.
right, because you're saying to find $500,000
Would be difficult without.
without getting rid of the capital plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and even a $500,000 on the Montpelier-Roxbury side would only move the needle about 2.5 cents,
So.
right? And then for Roxbury, maybe it's closer to 5.
I know this is given it's like my 5th or 6th budget. I know I should. The 2.5 cents and the percentage of rate increases, though, I still don't totally follow.
Yeah, I
So
focus more on the cents.
Yeah.
Focus is on the cent, I focus on the percent.
I know.
I know, and I always say that because then I can tell
Thank
somebody.
you, that's very helpful. Or did you just do that?
It's a column.
That yellow well, now,
No, that's good.
yeah,
That's good.
that's a little better, yeah.
The reason why I focus on cents is because then I can explain, well, what does that mean on $100,000 home value?
Right,
So 2.5 cents, if we were to move $500,000, that 2.5 cents equates to like $25 for every $100,000 home value. So a $300,000 home is an extra $75 you'd be paying on an annual basis. Is that right? Right?
if you said 25 for every 100,000, yes.
Yes. So, but in Roxbury's example, right now they're facing, as high as a 58-cent increase. That's $580 on every $100,000 home.
That's a lot.
and that's just the education portion of their tax bill.
Correct. And that's only for those that are paying the full homestead rate, which is a subset of that demographic we showed earlier.
Right. Okay. That was helpful.
And so that's why I like to talk about cents. I know you like
The
to tell you
difference.
like to talk cents. That's
Cause I can't do the math.
Yeah.
That's why we make a good team, Michael.
that's right.
So I guess I'll re-ask my question about the governor's proposal.
Yeah.
How does that How would that factor into the?
okay, so,
If he found 75 million.
Yep.
Give me a dollar yield. Off the top of your head, Jake Feldman.
like
I
84,
don't know what the yield would be, but,
it would be lower than it was last year, right? If you found another 75? Because the lower the yield rate has a positive impact on tax rate.
It would make the yield go up, which would
Yeah.
help tax rates.
Yeah, it would make the yield go up.
But
Uh,
it would bring the average state bill increase from 12 to like 7-ish, 7.5. So that means, proportionally that our Montpelier and Roxbury would shrink by, I think, similar proportions.
So if we pick the yield rate of say, nine something, 9,100, 9,200, we could see what it would impact the tax rate then. So Lynn, why don't you plug in like 9,200, yeah?
The $75 million could reduce the rate by a third.
Yeah, it would reduce everybody's tax increase by about more than a little bit.
Yeah, more than a
third.
third.
Well, if that's the case, we could go higher than 9,200. We could go 10 at least.
Where's money coming from again?
What's that, Jim?
I don't know.
Oh, where is he finding the money? Is
So,
that what you asked?
Plus something.
So I mean, if it gets, the dollar yield rises to 10 grand, then Montpelier is showing a tax decrease then. And Roxbury still has a pretty significant increase.
Yep, that's about a third, because it was at 58 cents before.
It was.
42%.
Right, it was at 58 cents increase. Now it's at 36. So that's about give or take, it's close. So yeah, that would be helpful. And then you add LTW ADMs. If we get our ADMs to 1,900, Libby, if you plug that in,
You're gonna have to fix my calculator.
that's fine. It's even more. That would drop it another 4 cents.
You could change Roxbury CLA to,
Why not?
We're here.
87, you could put
90.
equals 67 divided by 70.
You don't understand. I don't know how to do spreadsheets other than just plugging in new numbers. So what new number do you want?
So we use 9. How about 90%? Instead of 87, go to 90.
Sure.
Go to 90.
I have people to make my spreadsheets.
You got to make a percentage though, Libby.
I see.
Sorry. 0.0, yeah, something like that. Yes. Yeah, that 29, that's only 290 per 100,000. That's
So that's about half.
palatable.
That's half of what.
Yeah, it was half what we started with, just by changing the LTW, a better CLA rate, and a little bit higher of a property yield, basically drops that increase in half.
And how realistic are the things we just did?
I think they're very realistic, especially we have
Well.
tax experts here.
Hesitant to talk about the $75 million, which I understand.
I think the CLA thing is very realistic, and then the local count, I don't defer to you guys.
Right.
And Nick, we
75
trust.
million, I'm not sure, I don't know.
That
Yeah.
the legislature would have to vote on that.
Yeah.
But then it's still one-time money. So it
Right.
continues to dig a hole for next year.
Right.
Correct?
It would be replacing some of the one-time money from last year. It was 77 million going on bus.
Okay. So I just want to go back to the original questions that Libby prompted for the discussion. Is there anything the board is looking for in terms of changes to this budget to impact, and what we're talking about here are actually the changes that we can ask the administration to do? Like, reduce this by $500,000, for example. Or is there anything the board is looking for that to help impact tax rates?
Mine is some of the state stuff firms up. Like some of these numbers firm up.
The CLA, well, Jill said the official letter will be out soon, unless Roxbury does something with the state, which that might.
That would happen after
Afterwards,
January.
okay.
So that'll let us know how that adjusted residential tax rate fits into the Montpelier and Roxbury individual.
That will
Expect.
firm up before the next board meeting.
We expect. I mean, it sounds like Jake, you're expecting some better news there on Roxbury. Or,
Yeah, I think the Roxbury, like Jake was saying, the Roxbury CLA will be closer to 70 and like 67 probably. And I don't know the statewide adjustment. I don't think it can vary that much year over year. It's probably like 72 was what it was last year. I think it's just 70 and I think
I mean, we don't know for sure, but I think it's gonna be around 70%,
okay.
which is good. So
95. Did you say 67 for Roxbury, Joe?
As an estimate, yeah.
As an
I think
estimate.
Could still change, but it's,
And if-
it was 61 on the preliminary.
Okay.
We know it's higher than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
That gets Roxbury up to 95.7% instead of 87.1.
That's excellent,
That's a good move.
That's a big jump.
That's a good, in the right direction.
huge.
And so we would know that by the time of our next board meeting.
Yes, because this is our last December one, right?
You took
Yes.
off the screen.
I know I did.
Oh, okay.
I can put it back up on the screen.
And then I heard you say that the LTW ADM, you think that would be more firm by the next?
Nick told me today that by what he can see, this is not official from the Agency of Education. Our LTW ADM will be 1901. He's not positive, that is not a promise.
Right.
And so that's with this calculator with that, but then what is the actual
the
dollar
current
yield
dollar?
right
Yeah.
now?
Oh, wait, I can find it.
892, something like that.
8894,
Does anybody have the previous?
8849.
88.
84.9, thank you.
Yes, Tim is correct. So that is looking at a cent difference for Montpelier and 40 cents difference for Roxbury. Is that, am I reading that
10
correct?
cents, almost 11, 10.
10 cents, thank you.
10.7.
10-cent difference for Montpelier.
But it would be, that's almost a third reduction, so from 58 to 40. For Roxbury, which would be dramatic, even if no dollar yield impact, even if there's no increase in the dollar yield. Just having a better LTW ADM and a better CLA. Just knocked off 18 of the first 58 cents, that's huge,
Okay.
that's huge.
And yet still not great.
But it brings am I wrong to focus on the adjusted equalized residential tax rate? That seems to be. Before the CLA, like what's going on here?
What we
Right.
can control,
What
That's
we
correct.
can control, and so if that takes it from 1.5% down to, it cuts it in half to 0.7.
we're basically only 1 cent increase from last year.
I mean,
1
that's a
cent.
responsible budget by any
100%.
stretch of the imagination.
Yes.
Yes.
It has a lot to do with the revenues.
Yeah,
Right.
but still, I mean, it's what we're projecting, it's an
And
accurate
it's
budget.
100% a responsible budget,
And it's
yes.
incredibly responsible, yeah. I think it's always important to continue to sharpen pencils, look for efficiencies and all that, but I think we need to wait to see what the state tells us as we go through to make any bigger decisions.
Why do we, when did the union agreements get firmed up?
Depends when negotiations are done. And sometimes it's April, sometimes it's June. Depends on the year.
Do other districts do it at the same time, or can you do
Yeah,
it
for the
like,
most part.
isn't that tricky? Developing a budget before you agree on that?
Budgets are tricky all over the place.
That is
The big one.
What
That is a big one.
when people are the primary cost, it is very hard. I've been doing this a long time. And every year I've had to make assumptions. Sometimes I'm spot on, sometimes I'm not. And it's hard.
So the idea of a responsible budget is fun and it's wonderful, but when circumstances that are hitting people's homes are very different. I don't think it's unreasonable for school boards to make adjustments. You know, when the world changes around you, even though everything you were doing was working great, you might have to change. You know, I was watching Grant presenting budgets years ago, last night, I'm a little stressed. I've been watching budget presentations. And,
Like our grant,
yeah,
Grant Geisler?
yeah. And we were talking about ESSER funds and we were talking about, you know, administrative positions that were moved out of ESSER into the full budget. And we were talking about, programs to help address challenging behavior that were, I think the quote was, big chunk of change. I was looking for the phrase flywheel, but I never found it. But that phrase has been uttered, meaning there are ways in which we hope to improve our processes in classrooms so that the culture continues to generate a successful approach to academics, social emotional learning, behavior management. And the hope was that you could make changes that would sort of have a sort of upfront cost that then could kind of go away because the whole thing would change. And so, you know, thinking back to some of these changes that we made when we went from, you know, sort of one-time ESSER funds and moved those things into the local budget. And I'm just wondering about that, you know, I mean, I also, I completely and totally recognize that, in my humble opinion, we're offering about as good as it gets in this state in terms of the educational experience that kids are getting. And, you know, I really appreciate everything that everyone does. But like a 44% tax increase is really dramatic. The last time we saw a really dramatic tax increase, we cut $1.5 million and my town lost our school. So, you know, I'm really trying to diplomatically say, like, there are costs at the administrative level that we've never talked about, you know, questioning. We talked about a 0.5 FTE last year and turned into kind of a debacle. But there are other, I think there are other places where, so, you know, I just, it's hard for me to say, you know, I just wonder if there are ways in which our systems can improve so that we can look at some of our administrative costs. When we're looking at such huge tax increases. And I know it's nothing to do with irresponsible budget making or management, and the experience that we provide is outstanding. But like sometimes the world changes, and I don't know, that's as diplomatic as I could say it.
I did do some research in response to a caregiver I was talking to on Monday. Of like, what have you added and what have you taken away in the last few years? And so I went back to FY 23. And that's a lot when we started to move positions out of ESSER and into local funds. We were doing it gradually over time, but that was a big year. And in terms of SEL supports for kids, in terms of supportive positions for kids, so it was academics and SEL, not just SEL. We've added since FY 23 13 positions. We've decreased 7 positions since that same time. So the net increase is 6 positions that we've added to support kids. So it's definitely things that I think the board should be discussing. I think the board should be discussing it at the level of a dollar amount and let us do the hard work of where we find those dollars amounts. But that's my opinion. The board can totally disagree with me on that. So if the board is discussing what to do with our budget right now, then I would recommend having that discussion and saying being at a dollar amount rather than a systems level. Because it's my team and my principals who know those systems inside and out and what we need and where we could look for efficiencies.
I think that's why we were doing some of that with the calculator, which we can bring back up. I think it's what we are trying to figure out is what's the amount of money that we would remove from the general spending that would make a difference. Right? And so right now, with these better numbers for CLA and long-term weighted average daily membership. Because we went back to the dollar a year where it stands right now. We see a 40-cent tax increase in Roxbury and a 10-cent tax increase in Montpelier. And I think what we need to do is say, okay, so Libby, make that 33,000,005 and see what happens. So it's
$1 million
$1 million out of our budget. And it dropped the tax rate 6 cents.
Yeah.
Is that gonna make a difference? I'm
No,
asking a rhetorical question because what we
well-
should do is say, okay, go find,
I
maybe
mean,
we say go find 2
$1
million.
million.
there's not a lot you can do when you're looking at 58 cents or 44%.
No kidding.
But doing nothing is not acceptable. I keep having this conversation with my wife, and it's just like, I don't know how to be a responsible representative for my community without saying that no effort is an unacceptable answer.
I also don't think it's fair to say no effort. So let's just be clear about what we're doing,
Well, I'm
what
not-
we're saying here, because they did a lot of effort.
No, I'm saying no reduction is, I'm not saying there's no effort. I think you mistook where I misspoke. I know that everybody's trying, to do right by everyone and doing our best, and I just not finding some reductions in spending when there's this kind of increase, or at least me not advocating for some kind of reduction in spending would be negligent and irresponsible on my part. And I'm a small fraction.
I can
of what we
appreciate
got.
that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm trying to take your advocacy seriously. That's what I'm trying to do here is to say, what would it look like if we were to do that? So Jim, what were you gonna say?
Jake, for any person that has it. So in kind of like real plain English, what is driving this 44-cent increase? I mean, compared to what I get, it sounds like basically a determination that properties in Roxbury are massively undervalued. And a correction with the CLA to do that, probably driven by some recent purchases or real estate acquisitions that show that people are willing to pay a fair amount of money for property in Roxbury that well exceeds what has traditionally been sold. Which seems like, I mean, callous, but seems like a difficult trend for us to fix, and maybe not think that this body is in charge of fixing. Am I
don't
accurate
disagree.
or have I misread something?
I don't disagree with you, Jim, but I think Rhett's point is a fair one, which is
I think it's a fair one.
so far in the 2 presentations we've seen from Libby and Mike, that number 34.5 hasn't changed. We have not asked them,
Yeah.
what efficiencies could you find in general spending? Yet they've done a lot of work on finding efficiencies on the revenue side and a ton of work, thanks to Nick, on the LTW ADM. I do think it's fair for us to say, now maybe it won't make a huge difference, because even like I just theoretically said, let's find $1 million. It was still a 34-cent increase on taxes, which is still I think still hard to swallow. Would certainly be, I think we would have the room full of Montpelier residents if that was the case in Montpelier. And so I think it's a fair question. What efficiencies could you find? And even if it's not $1 million, what I hear Rhett saying is, even if it's not $1 million in efficiencies, let's see if we can find some. It'll make a difference, not just this year, but next year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, but is there? I mean, is there a way to get at that CLA and to? Because it seems like the state has basically said that Roxbury is now Waitsfield. And
The real estate market has.
yeah, and we're gonna tax it like it's Waitsfield. And Or, you know, a place next to Waitsfield is starting to look like it. And that seems to be a different issue than a irresponsible board spending a ton of money it shouldn't spend. And one that's as hard for us to like contain, because I mean, we could like lop our school budget to the point where like our schools didn't function. And it would still be a massive increase for us.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You know, when I look at the change in CLA in Roxbury in 1 year, it seems kind of crazy. Like that.
Believe me, I called Jill asking if it was a mistake.
Well, but I mean, I think it's reasonable to think, to Rhett's point and to Jim's point, that we as a board might have a role in saying, not just leave it to the town of Roxbury, but to say, you know, I don't know, question, challenge, I don't know the process here. I don't know how you get into this, but when you see a change that year, that much in a single year, I think it would be kind of negligent not to question it seriously and say, you know, what's driving this? And if there is some measure of recourse that we have to say, well, we think maybe you should have included that one because that's an outlier, as Jake said, you know, like that there might be some outlier sales and there could be a conversation about that. Like, I'd be very interested in understanding what the options
Is that
are.
the role of the board, though, to do
Well,
that?
that's what I'm questioning. That's what
Yeah,
I'm
I don't
positing.
know.
Well, and I looked, I mean, are, you know, is like Jay Hooper and who's the other, like, are they aware?
Oh,
I mean, it seems like,
state
something to address at state level would be like, you know, folks,
Yeah.
what's going on? This is, yeah, borderline absurd.
And that's, you know, I've been fielding calls and that's what I've been saying, and people understand that. Still, you know.
So I have to weigh in, because this is like the CLA is actually doing exactly what it's supposed to do, which is making up for the fact that we don't revalue all of our properties 100% every year. So it is not going to fix the problem to do something with the CLA. There is a very formal, very established process that the town can appeal the CLA to PBR, to the state, and they can ask for their CLA or COD to be recalculated. So that process exists. That happens in January because these things all get sent out at the end of December and they have to be published January. I also feel really compelled to say that, I'm not trying to sound harsh, this is happening to dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of towns. This is not a unique to Montpelier-Roxbury situation. There's some towns that have a 45% CLA. So what we're all experiencing is the legislature has established a statewide property tax system. And part of that statewide property tax system requires that each town gets this factor adjusted to their tax rate so that we're all paying our fair share. And if they hadn't, you know, there are things to try to like soften that blow. But the reality is that like if we were able to reappraise all of Vermont to 100% fair market value right now, our tax bills wouldn't change because the tax rate isn't going to be adjusted by the CLA. So it feels painful and it looks harsh, and it is, but it is like statistically doing exactly what it is supposed to do. And it's happening to a lot of towns around Vermont. And so until we can reappraise our property values more every year, but again, it won't solve the problem, because the problem is the demand continues to be there, that people are willing to pay a whole lot of money for homes. And so even if we reappraised at 100%, that would pretty quickly become stale, right? So like the state is not like deciding what the real estate market is doing. It's based on property tax, the property transfer tax return. It's literally based on sales that are happening. So until that demand is like slows down a little bit,
Cools off.
a lot of Vermont towns are seeing this really volatile CLA. And I do think it's important, you know, if you're looking at what your property tax bill is based on, even like mine in Montpelier, which wasn't changed that long ago, it's definitely not representative of what my house would sell on the real estate market. So while it's the legislature has established that this is the best proxy for how we can pay, we are now experiencing this thing. There was a time in like 2008 where it was very much the opposite, right? And our property values were like just like disintegrating. So it all has to raise the set amount of money. I'm just worried. I'm worried because I don't think it is the school board's role to try to question individual sales in the equalization study. Like that it is a very established like statistical model, and there's a very formal appeal process the town participates in. So I don't think there's any problem with us communicating to Roxbury, hey, we definitely want to support you in that. The town can support, or the board could support the town in appealing their equalization study results to us, to the state. But it is not going to fix the larger problem. And I think it's a dangerous game. What if all school boards in all towns started to pick apart sales? We still have to come up with the same amount of money for the education fund.
Yeah.
So I just worry it's not that there is necessarily a mistake, I guess that's what I'm saying. This is reality.
I'm not saying it's a mistake. I think I'm actually. I mean, the fact it's happening on a whole town level, and it's just kind of like what our reaction should be. I mean, I have a lot of empathy, but I also like if a citizen came in and said, well, my house was appraised at $290,000 last year and I was taxed on that. And now they say my house is worth $600,000. You school board have just increased my taxes by double.
Right.
My reaction would be like, no, we haven't. Like, we have not spent in a way that's increased your taxes by double. What's happened is you were getting taxed at one rate based on an evaluation that maybe not accurate or behind. So like I'd love to help you, but for the school to like cut in a way that gets you kind of back to where you were, we'd have to like chop off arms and legs and heads. And it would be different if the house was, appraised at 290 and it came in at 300 the next year, and we decided to, build a big new school and hire double our staff and come up with a huge budget, and they said, hey, my property taxes increased because you just doubled your spending. Then I think there's a lot more responsibility on us to justify that spending. It just puts us in a really difficult situation, because I hear you, Brett, that this is an absolutely insane number for the citizens of Roxbury. It's just being caused by apparently a real estate market that is driving.
What I've heard in this conversation is that there's very little the school board could do except with the exception of perhaps somehow supporting the town in an appeal process, as far as the CLA goes.
Has the town asked for help?
Asked us for help?
Yeah.
No, they have not asked us for help. I think they're just seeing all of this right now. So what I'm actually gonna do is ask that we pause this conversation about the CLA, because I think we're getting ourselves into a rabbit hole. And I wanna come back to, does anyone have, I've heard Rhett making a request to the administration that the next time we see a budget, could you find some efficiencies? We don't have an exact number.
$220,000.
Okay, we'll try for that. And then tell us what that impact is as well, because we are not, I don't think this board is interested in finding efficiencies that are going to cut off arms, legs, hands, and or to not be too hyperbolic.
I don't want to be doing that.
Negatively, that's the word I was looking for, impact student outcomes.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that we are sticking with those top priorities that are like the third slide of every one of these presentations. And if you can tell us, yeah, sure, we can find $220,000 and still stick with these priorities, that's a good thing for us to know. But if you can say, if you come back to us and you say, we tried, but here's what would suffer, then we also need to know that.
Yep. So the goal is non-student facing outcomes, positions.
Just don't negatively impact student outcomes,
Okay.
if you can,
Of course.
by trying to find, and perhaps what our administrators will come back to us and say is really the only place we could find that efficiency is in the capital plan. And then we as a board have to decide, is that something we're willing to do? And that would be the conversation we have in the first meeting in January.
I'd actually be interested in seeing that those efficiencies not in capital. What would it be?
If possible,
What, yeah,
right? We're asking,
because that's sort of the easy, you can always go to that. And so if we're challenging the administration to it, I'd like to see it not included.
okay,
Yeah, but so non-student facing doesn't touch the capital plan. Got
if
it,
possible.
if it's possible.
Yeah, and if you say we looked for 220, but we couldn't get there without him, you know, that's what I think
Or maybe we get to 150,
that's what,
something like that.
right. Unless anybody wants to say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going because I'm listening to Rhett, one of my fellow board members here, but perfectly within the rights of the board to say, no, actually, we're very happy with this.
I would definitely second Brett's ask. I think, I'm not sure what we can find, but I now, we can't unknow the fact that now we know that there is this potential significant tax impact. And it would be irresponsible of us to not go, okay, even though the CLA and the tax rates and all that, we have no control over. We have to at least make an effort to try to counteract that some way, or at least ask the question. So I would second that.
I'm not
Hold on, I've
opposed
got
to-
Kate, I see Casey and then Scott and then Jake. Did you also? Okay.
I certainly support looking for the efficiencies, and I guess I'm wondering like what the time frame is for having to know like what that efficient number is. If we say 220 now, we see it next time, we're like, well, really, we should be thinking of 500,000 inclusive or exclusive of the capital fund. Like, how much time do you all need to be able to get that adjusted and into a final package by the end of January? Like, should we be asking for bigger number now early on so we can see that and react to it instead of?
That's a great question, because we just have two budget meetings left. We have two board meetings left where we're gonna be discussing budget, and in the second one that we have left, the one on the 21st of January is when we vote. So there's actually really very little change that happens in that one.
Go ahead, jump in.
I think getting clarity on a frozen LTW ADM and better clarity on the CLA for Roxbury, what it's actually gonna be, it's closer to what we just put in there. I think, and then maybe even a different yield, or maybe the yield stays the same. That will give us maybe a better indication of how much we have to go after. Is it 220? Is it 450? How much do we want to move the tax rate?
That's the bigger question. That's what I was just talking about, because it doesn't have to be less than the general budget. It could be more revenue. It could be,
Correct.
it could be
Extraordinary.
something else. So
That's right.
my question would be, what impact on the tax rate, either in cent or percentage? If you want.
I mean, what I hear Red saying is anything that we can do. So I know that's not a very good answer, but I think that's what I heard you say. And I, you know, as far as Montpelier goes, it's not a very big increase, but whatever savings you or new revenue you're going to find would benefit Montpelier as well. So.
I just wanna, the language that we're using, I think is important, right? And when we say, I've heard a lot of people say find money, right? I don't think money is found, or, right? So, efficiency, right, means doing more with less. And so if we're finding efficiencies, what we're doing is we're asking everybody to do more with less resources.
Correct.
And so really what we're asking for are cuts, not finding efficiencies, because from what I've seen in the last, 3 years that I've been on the board, is a lot of changes to the way that we're doing things so that we're doing more with less. Right, and so I am sympathetic to what Rhett you're saying. The reality is what we have control over as a board is not what's driving the changes that are so drastic. And so I'm really concerned about us talking about making changes that don't have an impact on the problem.
Yeah, no, and that's the way I'd like to frame it up too. I mean, if there are if there are savings that can be had that do not impact our goals and the ability of our educators to achieve those goals, I am all for it because I do have sympathy for Roxbury, but if that's not the case, then I'm concerned about further reductions.
Right.
So,
And that's what we're asking the
Yes.
administrators to come back and tell us. This is as far as we could get without a negative impact. And I think just to have a little bit more clarity, Scott, what we're asking is to do the same, but with less. Maybe not more things, because we're not changing any programming. Same robust programming, see if we can find any way to do it by spending less money.
So efficiency, I think, is two ways, right? It's doing more with the same, right? Or doing the same with less. So to me, his point, I mean, if we could figure out a way to keep level programming and potentially cut costs that are not student facing, that would achieve that result.
That's
And that may involve a cut in spending or a change in an employee's contract from 260 to 210, or my point is we could figure it out. And Libby's really smart and I can run the numbers, and so we'll figure that out.
I saw Jake, you had your hand up earlier. Did you still want to make a comment or request? Okay, well then we have, I think, wrapped the board's portion of the discussion around the budget. We did leave time sort of for public comment. If there was any members of the public who are still online or still in the room who would like to ask a question or make a comment on the budget, that's what this time is for. The draft of the budget, as we've seen. Any hands getting raised?
No, they're all closed.
Okay. All right, so then the next item on the agenda is to enter executive session. Could I have a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing the discipline of public officer or employee under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A4 of Vermont statutes, a disciplinary or dismissal action against a public officer or employee?
You make a motion to that?
I'm asking for that motion.
I can make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion about the motion? Okay, all those in favor of entering executive session for the purpose stated? Any opposed? Okay. So we will move into room 126. And we'll be done with the meeting when we are finished with executive session. You don't need to stick around.
I'm assuming.
Thank you.
That's correct. And our student representatives will not be joining us. That's correct.
You can't.
Oh, thank you.